So today's Father's Day, and several people said to me as we were walking in, "Oh, you're doing a talk on Father's Day." But if you think about it, there were only 10 commandments. One of them had to do with honoring parents. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. That's pretty high up on the list of things that are important to do. And in New Church teaching, it talks about honoring our parents. Explaining this commandment, it says, honoring your father and mother means honoring your parents, obeying them, being attached to them, showing gratitude for the kindnesses they do. These include feeding and clothing their children, and bringing them into the world so that they may live civilized and respectable lives. Also bringing them into heaven by teaching them the rules of religion. In this way they provide for their earthly prosperity as well as their eternal happiness. They do all this because of the love they have from the Lord, in whose place they stand. So that's pretty significant, pretty important to stop and do. And with any person that we know and care about, the mind goes more quickly often to things that we would wish would change. And we need to often step back and look at things that we value. Now, here's a question, and this is a question I actually really want an answer to. What is the hardest thing about being a parent? Yeah. Letting go when it's time to turn them over to the Lord. Any other? Yeah? Having patience. Yeah. Yeah, Aaron? Okay, yeah. There's a lot of self-doubt and doing something you've never done before. Yeah. Those are great lists. Yeah, Mike. Teenagers, okay. The existence of them, the very existence. How dare they? Yeah, Bob. Saying no. Yeah, we want to say yes, don't we? Yeah. Okay, that's a great list. The one that I came up with was Craig's, letting them go, especially if you see them making decisions that are different from what you would make. So children, your parents are constantly telling you what to do, right? And some of you grown-ups, your parents are constantly telling you what to do, aren't they? But for you kids especially, you're going to grow up and you're going to be making your own choices. And one of the jobs that your parents are going to have to do is all the time is this. They have to stop themselves from saying what they'd like to tell you. And it's a really hard thing. And I'm going to read a story. It's one that probably you know quite well, about a father letting his child make choices. And as you listen to this, think about it not as we normally look at the story, thinking about the Lord as the Father, which is what the story is obviously about, but think about it in terms of our earthly fathers. A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me." So he divided to them his livelihood, and not long after that, the younger son gathered all and journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. And you probably know what happened. A famine arose in the land, and this younger son didn't have anything. He ended up attaching himself to a farmer who sent him out to care for the pigs, which was a huge degradation for him. But when he came to himself, he said, "In my father's house, The hired servants have bread enough and to spare. I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. And his father saw him a long way off and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And he said to his father, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But his father said to the servants, Bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And bring out the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For my son was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. And they began to make merry. Now the older son was in the field, and he drew near and heard the music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked them what these things meant. And they said, Your brother has come. And because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. And he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years I have been with you. I never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours, who has devoured your living with harlots, returns, you killed the fatted calf for him. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right to make merry and rejoice. For this your brother was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. Now, that's a story about the Lord. Nobody's ever going to live up to that. But we can look at those qualities and see, well, where have I found some of those in my father? And we men can look at them and say, how can I aspire to be more like those? So let's look at the parts of the story. So first, the father gave him his inheritance, even though he probably knew that the son would spend it poorly. And one of the interesting things about inheritance is you normally get it after your parents die, but he was willing to give it to him in advance and let him do as he wished. It's very similar to the way the Lord gives us truths, ideas, abilities, and lets us live our lives as we choose. He tells us the consequences, but he also lets us choose. So this is about, I think, fathers giving their children space to make their decisions. And to do that especially when they may disagree with what the children are doing. And he did make a mess. That's a real gift, that freedom. It's not a small thing. So now you children, how much freedom do you have? Parents are telling you what to do all the time, aren't they? And yet, if you pay attention, you're going to notice times when your parents step back and let you try something and learn, give you that freedom. Even when you're a child, that is still something that exists. Now then, the prodigal son fell into hard times, and then he came to himself. and said, in my Father's house, the servants have bread enough and to spare. Being part of my Father's household, even as a servant, is better than what I'm dealing with right now. So even though he was probably ashamed of what had happened to him, he hoped for something better because he believed that his father loved him and would receive him. Are you sure that your father would take you back if you'd made a mess, if you were sorry? It's a pretty big thing. We don't really think about it, but it's a really big backstop in our lives. But the son also knew that he couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. So he had this plan. He's going to go to his father and say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. He'd obviously been raised right, because he knew that there needed to be accountability. Children, do you know what accountability means? It means that other people expect you to take responsibility for your life. And I think that that's something that men and dads are often good at. He had to say he'd behave badly. He couldn't just pretend. And what's wonderful about this story, of course, is that he had to step up, and he was probably a little bit nervous. But in the story we read, his father saw him a long way off and had compassion and ran, fell on his neck and kissed him. It would have been so easy for that dad to lecture, wouldn't it? Didn't I tell you to spend that money responsibly, and now look what's happened to you. You realize you're not getting any more inheritance, right? But he didn't do that. He saw that he'd come back poor and had compassion. He saw that he'd come back instead of staying away because of pride. And he was looking to notice his son a far way off. And so he brought out the best robe, the ring, the ring, the sandals, made a feast, killed the fatted calf. And I think this is important because I think this is a part that we men don't always do quite as well, the celebrating part. And the thing that I like about this is that this younger son had not finished his journey, had he? He was just beginning the rehabilitation from the mess that he'd made of his life. And the father was willing to celebrate the steps that he had made, to see the partial progress, rather than waiting, come back to me when you really got it sorted out. And that was a beautiful quality. Now, the older son heard the celebrations, found out what they were about, and was angry. Probably we've all done that in some way, been angry that somebody else has been celebrated when we wished we would have been noticed, celebrated in that way. That's hard. Now, with the younger son, the father waited for him to come back. With the older son, he went out to him. There's a time for giving space, but there's also a time for moving towards someone. So when has your dad reached out to you, asked you how you're doing? When has he listened to you? It's a gift. And after he listened, he did something else. He challenged his son. Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It is right for us to rejoice and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. Now, he didn't just challenge him, he also reassured him. This guy's not getting any of your inheritance. He got his, he wasted it. Everything else is yours. These are the rules. This is fair, and I'm playing by the rules of fairness. I think dads are often good at that. But then he also challenged him. Look outside of your own concerns and see the journey that your brother's on and appreciate it. And rejoice in the forgiveness that we're offering here. So has your dad done any of those things? And have any of you men striven for those ideals, even if you feel like you failed? Did your father give you space so that you could grow and make your own choices? Did he hold you in his heart even when you were a long way away emotionally or spiritually? Did he notice your partial efforts and rejoice in them even if they weren't fully completed? Did he reach out when you were hurting and listen to you? Did he challenge you when your thinking wasn't right? That nobody can be a father like the Lord is. But here's a story of a man doing very good things men can do in a unique way, and we can stop and we can notice our dads. And we can notice the father figures. And then we can look at ourselves and ask how we might step up to be more of that ourselves, to bring that presence into the world. And the thing that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this story is that when a man does his job well as a father, one of the things that he creates is safety. Does this when he shows up, when he gives us space, when he challenges, when he acts with integrity and consistency. So thank you, all of you dads. We're striving. Thanks to all of you men who are trying to step up even if you're not a dad yet, or maybe never will be, but can still bring that energy into the world. And then, of course, thank you to the Lord, who is our Heavenly Father, who is the model of complete safety and complete integrity that we can all aspire to be more like.